Welcome to Veterans in Transition, where we promote the veteran community. Each week, we travel around the region highlighting veteran-related news, issues, and resources. In this edition of Veterans in Transition, we hosted our signature event, Vets Talk, honoring the business principles of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. The MC for this event is Melvin Capers, United States Air Force.
We're going to start today's event by introducing Mr. Robert E. James II. He is chairman of the National Bankers Association and founder and CEO of Vttr Financial Corporation. We're happy to have him with us, so Mr. Robert James, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Melvin. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Again, my name is Robert James II, and I'm really honored to join Veterans in Transition today as you honor the memory of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Thank you to Rod Miner for inviting me, and thank you to all of the veterans here today for the sacrifices you have made. I'm privileged to represent Carver State Bank of Savannah, Georgia, in service of as chairman of the National Bankers Association. Both Carver and the NBA were founded in 1927 and are celebrating their 95th anniversaries this year. As one of the nation's 19 remaining Black-owned banks, Carver has proudly embraced our mission to provide the building blocks to financial freedom. The NBA has a distinguished legacy itself as the voice of America's minority-owned banks, representing Black, Asian American, Hispanic American, and Native American banks in our shared goal to eliminate the racial wealth gap in America. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. is commonly remembered for his efforts to secure basic civil rights for Black Americans. And we often think of those rights in the context of access to public accommodations and voting. While the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act were monumental achievements in American history, and we owe a debt to Dr. King for leading the effort to strike down legal segregation and guarantee Black people the equal right to vote, Dr. King also clearly recognized that the right to eat in whatever restaurant you want, or even the right to vote, are only a part of the puzzle when it comes to being a full citizen in this country. Dr. King also fought for economic rights, such as access to good jobs and the ability to generate wealth through home ownership and entrepreneurship, because he knew that full economic participation is a critical aspect of full citizenship in America. Unfortunately, we are very far from full equality for Black and brown people in America, perhaps even further from this goal than when Dr. King was cut down on the balcony of the Lorraine Motel in 1968. According to the Federal Reserve and other economists, in 1968, the median Black household had net worth of about 9.7% of that of the median white household. By 2016, we had actually lost ground, with the median Black household being worth only about 8.7% as much as the median white household. A 2020 report commissioned by Citicorp indicated that if we close this racial wealth gap today, we could add $5 trillion to the US gross domestic product. Closing this gap would be good for everyone. Since the murder of George Floyd, Americans have paid more attention to our racial inequality than at any time since Dr. King's assassination. Corporate America has pledged billions of dollars to invest in minority businesses and communities, and large banks and even the federal government have made unprecedented amounts of capital available to some minority banks. While it is important for the government and corporate America to support minority banks and other businesses, it's equally important that we support one another. Dr. King's last speech was delivered in support of striking sanitation workers in Memphis, hardworking men seeking a decent wage, safe conditions, dignity, and a future for themselves and their families. In other words, they were looking for full economic citizenship. In that speech, he not only called for the community to march in support of the workers, but he also called for them to pool their resources and use economic power to affect the change that they wanted to see. He called for them to follow the lead of his organization and take their money out of the bigger local banks and deposit it with Memphis's Black-owned bank. This call to action is still relevant today. When possible, we should deposit our money in minority-owned banks, and our banks should turn around and make that capital available to minority-owned businesses, which will allow us to build our collective economic power as Dr. King instructed. If we address the racial wealth gap, Black and brown communities will be stronger and the economy will work better for all Americans. In that final speech, Dr. King recounted some of his greatest successes in the struggle for racial justice. From Birmingham to Montgomery to Selma, he also made this connection between the struggle for integration, voting rights, and economic rights. Dr. King said that God had allowed him to go up to the mountain and look over, and that he had seen the promised land. He said that he might not get there with us, but that his eyes had seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. Let's work together and fulfill Dr. King's vision. Let's get to the promised land and eliminate the racial wealth gap in America. Thank you so much.
So let's bring on our first speaker, and she is Jan Adams, founder and CEO of JMA Solutions. And Jan recently acquired ownership of Ideal Electrical Supply Corporation, where she is the president and CEO. She is a former Chief Master Sergeant in the United States Air Force. And Jan has an understanding, a great understanding and appreciation for what it takes to commit to a path of service and progress. We are so delighted to have with us today Ms. Jan Adams. Jan's welcome to Vets Talk.
Greetings, everybody, and Happy New Year. And thank you, Melvin, for that introduction, and thanks for your service and everyone else's service that's here today. As mentioned, I'm Jan Adams, a 24-year veteran of the U.S. Air Force. Melvin also mentioned that I own and operate two companies. JMA is a government consulting firm with over 150 full-time employees, and we provide engineering, training, software development, financial support, and so many other disciplines to the federal government. We're also certified to provide PMP boot camp training. Ideal Electrical Supply Corporation supplies electrical components in the areas of lighting, switch gears, and wire to the DMV and Baltimore utility companies and construction sites locally and out of state. Some of our large local projects were providing the electrical components for the Nat Stadium, the Audi Soccer Stadium, and phase 1 of the wharf renovation. But before I begin, I want to thank Rod Miner and the VRTV Consulting and Veterans in Transition team for gathering us here for this momentous occasion. You have made tremendous strides to bring light to the veteran community through your advocacy, outreach efforts, and programs held on WHUT-TV. Thank you, Rod, for providing us with a platform to share our stories. So today we're here to honor and recognize a profound trailblazer who is in our community, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Dr. King was, of course, we all know, a distinguished leader, civil rights activist, and philanthropist. He was and is still known for his efforts in the community and serves as the true definition of determination, hard work, and perseverance. But much like Dr. King, I'm a dreamer, and I like to say that I also dream big. The lessons he taught and the principles he embraced are applicable in many areas of my life, including business. As a minority veteran and woman in business, confidence has always been a key to my success. Throughout my career, it was important that I not only harbor success for myself, but use it as a platform to inspire my family, other women, and others to give back to my community. Before I became the businesswoman, philanthropist, and mentor that I am today, I was a small town girl from Youngstown, Ohio. And at the age of 18, I married my high school sweetheart. By the age of 22, I was divorced with 2 young children. So I moved to the projects and got on welfare. So once the children attended school full-time, I went to work full-time. Then I decided I really wanted to get out of that town. So at the age of 27, I decided to enlist in the United States Air Force. My children traveled with me until they graduated from high school in Germany. And after retiring with 24 years in 2000, I moved to DC where I worked as a contractor. And then 5 years later, I founded my own contracting firm, JMA Solutions, with nothing but the confidence and will to succeed. In the words of Dr. King, faith is taking the first step, even when you don't see the whole staircase. Sometimes that is all you need, and that was all that I needed. Another ideology that I admire from Dr. King was his commitment to service. Even in the face of evil, he continued his mission courageously and was determined to make a difference. Dr. King once said, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." But normally when we think of injustice, we often associate it with social issues like crime and poverty. However, there's plenty of injustice to be dealt with in business. As we all know, it's difficult for minority business owners to compete and receive the large contracts at the level of the Northrop Grummans and the SAICs and other large companies. But we got to figure out a way to break into those close-held entities and win some of that work. When I started JMA Solutions, I wanted to create a diverse community of qualified and skilled staff. It was my responsibility to actively recruit talent from all walks of life. In addition to creating opportunities, it was also my obligation to give back. And over the past 15 years, JMA has donated to 100 charities. Giving back truly makes my team proud to continuously uplift others. And my journey to entrepreneurship was no walk in the park. Very much like Dr. King, I am never driven by fear, and I welcome any and all challenges. So last year, I was presented with the opportunity to embark on a new business endeavor. And in November of 2021, I acquired and became the president and CEO of Ideal Electrical Supply Corporation. Although JMA and Ideal Electrical Supply are businesses with distinctly different business models, I've always been confident in my ability to lead a team to success. The life lessons that I learned from my toughest experiences faced have allowed me to stand here and share my story with you all. No one would have thought that a young girl from Youngstown, Ohio, would be the CEO of two successful Black-owned firms in the United States. So to my fellow entrepreneurs and future business leaders, take charge, take ownership, and be confident in your ability to lead and succeed. As the godfather of soul, James Brown once said, "I don't want nobody to give me nothing. Open the door and I'll get it myself." So as we take time to pause and reflect on the life and achievements of Dr. King, let us remember his teachings, his impact, and his legacy, and always believe that you can achieve the impossible when things don't seem possible. And once you achieve success, ask yourself, what are you doing for others? Be the inspiration you would like to see in this world. Thank you so much for allowing me to share my insight and story, and I look forward to hearing from the other panelists.
Our next speaker is Mr. Everett Browning Sr. He's a retired U.S. Navy chief and president and CEO of Coalition of Minority Business Owners. He is also a former candidate for the Maryland State Senate. So you talk about moving the baton. He is indeed doing that. Mr. Everett, welcome to Vets Talk.
Hey, thank you so much. It's an honor and a privilege. And to my fellow panelists, first, thank you for your service. As I thought about Martin Luther King and the veteran, we kind of realized that a lot of us was in a crossroads in the military. You think about Martin Luther King and being nonviolent and maybe his opposite, his where he looked at the war. But many of us who went into the military realized we had an obligation to open doors, that whether we were the only Black person in that room, we represented our families. And so I came into the military at 17 years old. Believe it or not, I was a teenage father, had 3 kids by the time I was 21, and I was a single father in the military through my 20-year careers. Now I'm proud to say my youngest son is a lawyer, my daughter has an MBA, and my oldest son has his own company. And that happened because of those principles that King let us understand about sacrifice. That a lot of times, one of my favorite scriptures is Proverbs 13:22, that a good man leaves behind a inheritance for his children's children. And that inheritance is not just finance. It's an understanding of education, a purpose of what are you doing that's bigger than you. A lot of us, when we start our business, and people's first thing, I want to make money. But once you establish your business, I like to talk to people about what are you giving back? How are you giving back? And it's difficult a lot for African Americans, especially when we start businesses, because the support isn't there sometimes. The support from family, from friends, from the community isn't there. And then when you start rolling, everybody kind of shows up and say, well, can you give me a job? Can you help me out? How do you do it? And I tell the panelists, and I'm pretty sure all you have been there before, we have to be committed and accountable to give passing our knowledge on. It's a lot easier sometimes to write a check to a nonprofit. It's a lot easier sometimes to show up, but that mentoring is not there. All of us have been through the moments where we didn't know how to figure it out. We were just standing at a crossroads, just guessing. There was no place for us to go to understand, well, how do I learn about overhead? How do I learn about doing my G&A? Who do I call? Do I need a place? How do I get my certification? And it was an island, but that risk, and that's why I'm so honored to be on this panel, to see those of us who many times, I'm assuming like me, felt like giving up and just becoming an employee and going home. It's like, how much money can I lose? The stress it puts on you, your family, and your community. But then that success comes with the joy, but it also comes with accountability. And that is accountability that I think a lot of us got in the military, meaning that it's bigger than us. You're not just accountable to you. You're accountable to the person beside you. You're accountable to that family back home. You're accountable to that mission, and you persevere regardless of, even if you understand it. You just put your head down and move in faith. And so today, as we look at Martin Luther King, who just, for most of us, we think about him and what he accomplished, but during this time frame, if you study, it was tough. A lot of people came after him, and it just wasn't racist people. A lot of people in our community came after him who didn't believe in what he was doing or giving support. And the truth is, like many of our heroes, he didn't die a wealthy man. He didn't leave a huge financial inheritance for his family. What he left was a legacy. And I think that's the most important thing as business owners we should focus on, is what are we leaving behind for our families? What are we leaving behind for our communities? Me running for office was me understanding that I had an obligation. I had been blessed, and I knew that I could, have my business, get my nice house, my car, be quiet, and take care of my family and just move. But if you're not giving back, if you're not sitting down and being part of the solution, it's easy to move away and put your kids in a private school and say, hey, I'm not a part of that anymore. But I'm loving what I've heard so far about the other panelists, that they are committed to something bigger. And I think that's what Martin Luther King was about, is, are you committed to something bigger than your own success? What are you truly doing to educate people, to make sure, whether it's kids? I'm also a member of the 100 Black Men of Prince George's County. And that focus there is how we mentor that next generation, and realize that a lot of people don't have parents or anyone in the house who can tell them about financing and savings and investing. And what does it mean to be a business owner? What does it mean to be humble enough to learn? And when you go into the business, you're not going to be a millionaire overnight, and you don't. And I tell people, I didn't go to college right away, but if you want to put in that work, if you want to be dedicated, if you want to call, and I'm right, like for me, I'm writing down everyone's name, because I'm going to reach out to everyone on this panel just to, can I buy you a cup of coffee and pick your brain? I love surrounding myself with a network of people who can provide a way for me to give back. I've been blessed, and I think the obligation is continued blessing. So on this weekend, and Brother Rodney, he's someone who always reaches out to vets, and he inspires me to make sure that I do what I can for those who are not as blessed as me. While I know, like you guys, the hard work I've put in, I don't take it for granted that many people sacrificed for me to be here. There was many people who couldn't open a business up, who couldn't legally, or they couldn't do it because they were under threat. So to be in my position, the door I walked through, I realized that we all have an obligation to open bigger doors. So thank you, Mr. Melvin.
Thank you so much, Mr. Browning. And I got to tell you, I want everybody to just kind of take a moment and think about this based on what the Everett Browning just said. Imagine if Dr. King had stopped dreaming and thrown in the towel and said, I can't do this. But he didn't. And each one of our members today, our panel members today, they are continuing to move the baton forward. And thank you for continuing to dream. The one thing that Everett kept talking about is service before self. And guess what? That's one of the Air Force's core values, service before self. And our next speaker has proven it time and time again, Dr. Xavier Bruce. He also goes by Dr. X. He's a graduate of the Air Force Academy and has earned a doctorate of business administration from Walden University. He is the CEO of Uplift Energy Coaching and co-founder and executive director of Uplift Empowerment. Dr. X is also the commander of the National Association of Black Veterans for the Western Maryland chapter. It is indeed a pleasure to welcome here Dr. X.
Wow, how do I follow all of these esteemed panelists? This is going to be a bit tough, but I'll manage. It's an honor and a privilege to join you all. Thanks for the opportunity, Brother Rodney, and thanks for everyone's service on the panel. Again, I'm Dr. X, retired Air Force Lieutenant Colonel, Air Force Academy grad, 100% disabled Afghanistan war veteran, and life member of Omega Psi Phi fraternity. So I'll be brief and be out. I just want to take a few moments to explain how Dr. King used what I call conviction with purpose and vision. Conviction in that he had a firmly held belief that peace and nonviolence would help our Black people see it through. Purpose in that he had an intention and an objective. Vision in that he had the uncanny ability to think about and plan for the future of our people with imagination and wisdom. Like was mentioned before, Dr. King once said that take the first step in faith. You don't have to see the whole staircase, just take the first step. And this is exactly the advice I took when starting Uplift Energy Coaching. You don't find too many brothers out there doing life coaching, but I had the faith that I could be the change that I wanted to see in the world. You see, when I was in Kandahar, Afghanistan back in 2011, I was dealing with a rocky marriage, was struggling, trying to finish up my doctorate, and I had rocket attacks at the same damn time. So it was a lot going on. And one morning after a rocket attack, I was sitting in a bunker alone. And it's crazy how in Afghanistan, the bunkers are above ground, not below ground. So I don't know how we're able to protect ourselves in that fashion. But I was in there by myself because I'm an early bird. I was there by myself in the bunker. And that's when I said, you know what? I got to uplift my damn self. I got to uplift my damn self. Now, what that means, because I know that ruffles the feathers of some people, it doesn't mean that you don't ask for help. It doesn't mean that you just, stop taking the medication that you need to be taking for your body and your health, and that you just become self-righteous and you stop praying about it. But there are some things that you need to do on your own. So when I came back to the States, I finished my doctorate while in Afghanistan. I tried to find a life coach when I came back to the States. But as you probably know, the vast majority of life coaches are older white females. Like I said, there weren't many brothers in this space. So I decided to become a life coach so that our veteran brothers and sisters can get coached. There's a difference. There's therapy, there's counseling, there's mentors, there's advisors out there, but a coach helps you get those first downs, help you push the ball forward. And so I wanted them to get coached by someone who looks like them and has similar lived experiences. So that is what started Uplift Energy Coaching. Now, my life coaching practice has led to numerous speaking engagements like this one, as well as creating an ecosystem, a safe space for Black veteran producers and consumers of knowledge as it pertains to the different types of stress that mess up the way that we show up at home, work, school, and business. And as Dr. King said, I did not see the whole staircase when I started this. I was like, okay, I'm getting into this field. It's not too many people out there that look like me. You have limiting beliefs, you have false assumptions and interpretations, bias. You have that inner critic that says, dude, what are you doing? Bruh, you're not gonna make it. But here we are. I did not see the whole staircase. I didn't see where my gift would take me. I just took the first step. And damn it, it's your time to do the same. Again, I'm Dr. X. Learn how to empower, inspire, and uplift your damn self.
That's all for this edition of Veterans in Transition. We ask that you like us on Facebook and follow us on social media. If you have a story idea, reach out to us at info@vetsintransition.com. And remember, stay relevant and stay on purpose. Until next time.